I love photography, but I'm not really interested in a picture. There's a difference between pictures of something and pictures about something. And I wanted to make pictures about something. Because I really am interested in this idea of science being our Achilles heel. A friend of mine sent me an email, and it was a really dark email. And I was kind of in a dark place then, like a few weeks ago. Like, things were not good. Picked up my phone, and it said, "It looks like our terrible world is revealing itself." And then I started reading it, and I'm like, holy shit, this is hugely significant. So there was definitely a compelling urge to do this. And I thought, if I do not go do this, I should just leave photography now. When I was about 14 years old, my dad bought me a camera. It was a Yashica. I'm not sure why he got me the camera, but maybe as a birthday present or something. I don't really remember, but I do remember that I loved it when I first, grabbed that camera. And at the same time, I think magazines were probably in their peak. I mean, everybody talks about a golden age of magazines, but for me, it was really the late 80s, early 90s. And as a kid, my family, they subscribed to Time, Newsweek, all the usual news weeklies, and I remember opening up in these big, huge photographs. And that was the first time where I started connecting events, this idea of history being created or made, and then the idea that somebody actually has to go out there and discuss what this history is. I started working, I got a summer job at a tabloid, the Toronto Sun. I worked there for 4 months. All my friends were, kind of turning their noses at, oh, how could you work at the Sun? It's a tabloid. But it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. It was 4 months that I had never, ever made any money off of photography before, and this idea of getting paid for it was really exhilarating. And then I kind of had this brainstorm that, well, there are other newspapers and magazines in the world, and I ended up working a lot for the New York Times and for some German publications, which was great. So at first, when I started at the Globe, it was Toronto and sort of area. And then as I got more experience and more clients, it was all across the country. My interest in Russia begins, I guess, I was 12 years old because I had pneumonia. I was bedridden for 3-4 months. And the only thing I could do was listen to the radio. And I remember early May of '86 lying in my bed, and there was a news report that came on about this place called Chernobyl and a massive nuclear accident. So since then I got kind of fascinated, I guess. And I met some police officers in a small town, and I had met, like, I don't want to call them mafia guys, ex-mobsters, but still, criminals. This was a very focused project. I went out with the cops and they were doing their raids, and I would hang out with the criminals and such. And at that time, then the work kind of split off into two tangents. One was this idea of power and the acquisition of power, but then also out of my, again, trying to sate my childhood curiosity was Chernobyl. Everybody thinks Chernobyl is three-headed babies and monsters and mutant catfish and such like that. And when I got up there, I was really pleasantly surprised that it had completely smashed any expectation that it had. And that's when I knew that, okay, I've got to come back and photograph Chernobyl. There was a man I met named Nikolai who said, oh, come into my home, and we drink vodka, and it was one of my first sort of experiences in a traditional Ukrainian village, and the whole custom of meeting somebody and being invited to the house. And And his friend Victor came over, Victor Popovichenko, who I ended up photographing a few months later. And that photograph, I guess, was my key moment where things changed for me. I'd won a world press for that. He's falling over, you know, trying to catch his vodka and stuff. And that was kind of when that was when the seed was planted. Okay, I'm going to do Chernobyl. But I wanted to do Chernobyl in winter, so I waited about 8-9 months, and I went back for 3 months in the winter of 2006. And I had lived up in Chernobyl, close to the zone, and I just spent all my time up there photographing that project. Since then, I just have kept going back. I've been into the zone probably 15, 20 times, but I've probably been to the Chernobyl region itself, I don't know, 30 times or something like that. It's just something that I kind of love now. I always tell my friends I want to get a second home, and it's going to be in Chernobyl. It's quite beautiful, actually, you know. So this is, and it was one of my first projects where I started questioning the way I work and what I'm working on and why I'm working on it. What kind of photography do I want to do? And that's what Russia kind of allowed me to do. I'm trying to explore different ways to talk about this an atomic world that we've decided to live in. So when Japan happened, and the Fukushima especially, I thought, I have to go, because it's almost mirroring what's happened with Chernobyl. That is why I'm sitting here in Japan now, which is a place that I kind of wanted to come to, but I never really thought I would end up here so quickly. But obviously with what's been happening in the last 3 weeks with Fukushima and the nuclear reactor, I just felt that, okay, I need to go. And I see Tokyo now as the city, the archetypal apocalyptic city. It's the perfect place for the world to end. The first thing I did notice was about the lights, that it is dark, and this idea of the electricity, right? And then, of course, the reason the electricity is at, I think, what did they say, 60% capacity, is because of what's happening with Fukushima, which is the main power source for Tokyo. So Tokyo relies upon what's happening in Fukushima. And what's happening in Fukushima is not helping the situation in Tokyo. When I told people, I said, I'm going to Japan, and I'm going to do a story about the exclusion zone and what's happening there. I just knew. I knew what I was going to find, because I had that experience in Chernobyl and Zholty Vody, and I kind of know about these wastelands which are forgotten. And it actually did meet every expectation, but it also completely spooked me. You start seeing the actual destruction of the earthquake and the tsunami. I mean, that's the really interesting thing about Fukushima, I think, is it wasn't just an earthquake, it wasn't just a tsunami, but now, on top of it, on a third layer, they've got this nuclear catastrophe. That was the other weird thing, is that there was no police, no Japanese defense forces. In Minamimasoma, you know, they had the City Hall building, and there was people there, you know, testing for radiation, and the only, you know what, the only military that was there was the guy parking the cars. It was actually a pretty normal city. And I was writing an email to my friend, I said, picture your neighborhood in Toronto, and I just said, called you right now, leave right now, run. How did you leave your apartment? Like, is your television set on? Were you eating dinner? What were you doing, you know? And that's exactly what I sensed in Odaka, that it was just, people just suddenly left. Windows open, you know, the curtains blowing in the breeze, going into people's homes, especially that one home with the bowl of oranges just sitting on the table and such. You know, if people are really planning to never come back to their home, I think they're going to take that bowl of oranges and probably throw them out or put it away or clean out their fridge or something like that. You know, I think if you're given a week to leave your home, you're going to make your home in a state that is never returnable. Complete annihilation, just this, like somebody took a chessboard and just like threw all the pieces aside, you know. And this silence and this stillness was something that I've only ever heard in Chernobyl. I've only had there 2 times. I really think we're the only people, no, I know we were the only people to tell that story, to go to the exclusion zone and to actually see what the reality is there. And ironically enough, I had read a report yesterday on CNN saying there are bodies, yes, there are bodies still in the exclusion zone, but the bodies that are left are ones we can't get to because they're inside. And it's a radioactive thing, but we've cleaned, there are no bodies on the streets. And we had specifically seen a body in Odaka. And if we've seen one, there's definitely more, because it was pretty much not in plain sight, but all you had to do was walk 30 seconds off the main street, and there's a body. I've always had an understanding of who I am as a photographer and what I'm trying to say. And I've always seen my career as a body. Everything, it might take me 20 years to finally tell the entire project that I want to tell. I mean, I always try to be consistent with my work and develop it, but also kind of maintain its basic structure, its premise. And then that's, going back to our statement about what a novelist does. And you really have to look at the nuance and subtlety and maybe use allegory or some or metaphor to get across the story. You see people on the street, please give money, or if you want to help the tsunami relief, this is what you can do. But I have an idea, a feeling that people just don't really understand. They're not grasping the whole scope of the potentiality. I think with the earthquake and the tsunami, yeah, it was a catastrophe, but it's an engineering catastrophe. We can fix this, but you can't fix what's happening in Fukushima.